Hello YouTubers, you're watching Just Do It Yourself channel, and today we have 2016 Nissan Rogue, and we will be replacing rear brake pads as well as brake caliper bushings or boots. So let's get to it. So the car is on a jack stand, so remove the wheel, 21 mil socket, and I will leave links for parts and tools in the description to the video. Now I will just pull the wheel off. Before we remove the caliper, we'll take a pry bar and just go behind the brake pad and we'll push. Actually, it's worn out quite a bit, but we need to push the caliper back. So those pads are loose and the caliper can be removed easily. So now we are looking at two 14 mil bolts, which are slide pins 1 and 2 over there. This hose is on the way, so we'll go ahead and remove those 2 bolts for now. So because there is not much room for the socket, just use a wrench, ratcheting wrench, get that loose. I won't remove it completely, but we'll get it loose. We'll do the same thing for the bottom one. This one has more room, so we'll actually use wrench or ratchet, long ratchet. I don't know why, but those bottom ones are usually sitting quite tight. I actually broke my 1/4-inch ratchet on the other side. As you can see, they are quite tight. So now we can switch to something smaller. Okay, so before we pull the caliper off, we need some sort of a hook to get it hung so it's not resting on the hose. We want to save the hose. And those bolts or slash pins, they should be honestly quite loose if they are properly lubricated. This one you can see is stuck. So it's not too bad. Somebody used anti-seize versus brake lubricant, which is not good. That's why we will get it cleaned. Same story here. Somebody used anti-seize, so we will replace this rubber bushing, and just to note, it's the bottom pin, as well as we will replace those boots. They're getting old, and if you don't replace those, when they crack, all this job will be useless. So we got that hung. Next we will replace 2 bolts on the back, one on the bottom, one at the top, and those are 17 mil. So we'll remove them, and that will help us or allow us to remove the caliper bracket. So I'm just using a 1/2-inch ratchet and 17 mil socket. We can probably fit impact with the swivel. We will do the same for the bottom one. I'll just switch to the smaller ratchet and we'll finish removing those 2 bolts. So here are 2 bolts from the caliper bracket. Now the caliper bracket just slides out. So we'll remove this pad that is super tight. It shouldn't be like that. That's the reason why you need to clean your caliper bracket before installing the new pads. So let's get to that. Okay, so now we are looking at the bracket. We will remove this hardware, top and bottom, and you can see there are tons of rust. So when this rust builds up, it prevents or restricts the brake pad movement, and then they get seized, and your brake overheats, and your fuel consumption goes up, and tons of issues. So you want to take a file and make sure that you remove all the rust. Normally wire brush does not work well for this. It will make the surface shiny, but bigger chunks of rust will stay. So we go with the file, both sides, so anywhere that hardware is touching the bracket itself, we need to make sure that we got it cleaned. And we will go ahead and remove this rubber boot. We will replace it. But if yours still fine, I would still recommend replacing because they are quite cheap, just a few dollars. But all this job is dependent on them. So this is clean. We will flip it and do the other side. Okay, so now when those both surfaces are clean, we'll go with the wire brush around that groove where the rubber bushing sits, because if it doesn't fit properly, it won't seal. Moisture gets inside, and again, tons of problems. And at this point, we should be good. Next, to clean everything inside, and like if yours was nicely sealed and the grease inside is nice, you don't need to worry too much about it. This one was filled with anti-seize. That's not a proper lubricant for the brakes. You need something like this, silicone ceramic brake lubricant. So we want to clean this as much as we can and put proper lubricant inside. Just go with paper towel and some brake clean. That should be good. Okay, other thing that requires cleaning is the caliper itself. So we need to clean this piston area before we retract it back, so it's sticking out nicely, and don't worry about damaging that rubber boot, as well as those 2 ears or lips. Same approach. You want to grind them so they are nice and free of any rust debris, because we will also lubricate those going forward. That's good. All right, so if you need to replace your rotor, this rotor is still fine. You're already there. This is accessible to adjust your parking brakes. I don't see any screws on the rotor itself, so you can just, if you're replacing it, hammer it off. Usually it sits pretty tight over here, so you can spray it with WD-40. You get your rotor out, you clean the hub, grease it with anti-seize in this case, put it back, and we can proceed with retracting that piston. So when we start retracting the piston, the fluid will be pushed back into the reservoir. So you need to make sure that there is enough room in the reservoir for that fluid to come back. In this case there is. If yours is already full, take a syringe and empty it a bit. Okay, to retract the caliper piston, we'll just use an old brake pad, just like that. We'll use a C-clamp. Make sure that everyone has a C-clamp around the house. So we'll just slowly push it back, and just need to go slow so the piston will go in. We will push it basically until the brake pad hits the body of the caliper. So that's what it is. We'll retract it, remove it. And that's what we want it to be. Next we'll go ahead and lubricate those pieces that we just cleaned. That should prevent any squeaking when brakes are applied, as well as will protect this from rust. Alright, so next we will put some grease into the caliper where the sliding pin goes. You don't want to put too much since there is limited space, so those pins need some room to move. Now I will install the bushing, or the boot to be exact, and I'm repurposing the old one since I accidentally ordered the wrong kit. I will leave a link in the description with the correct one. Next we will apply some grease where the hardware sits, and the main purpose of that is to prevent corrosion, because if the moisture gets trapped between the hardware and caliper bracket, it will cause to oxidize or will cause corrosion, in other words. So we'll just install the hardware, same top and bottom. Normally in a kit with the brake pads you receive two different types for Nissan. Just make sure you use correct one. So now we will apply a little bit of grease exactly where the brake pad sits and moves. This is not a must step since those are galvanized and brake pads should move quite freely too, but we will still do it. Seems to be working quite well. Last thing that I forgot to do, we will clean this area where the caliper bracket is attached to the wheel knuckle, and probably should have done it before so we don't get the dust on our fresh grease. So do it before, please. Should be good. Alright, so I have cleaned the caliper bracket bolts and put some blue Loctite. And normally I would say go ahead, attach your caliper bracket and get it torqued, though we will just get it started. since we have that top sliding pin that has the hose on the way, and it needs some wiggle to get it in. Okay, next we'll go ahead and install the brake pads. So this wear indicator needs to go on the inner pad, just like that. And also, normally it should be pointing towards the vehicle movement. So if vehicle spins this way, it should be at the bottom. Otherwise, if the caliper is on the other side, it will be on the top. But we will just get it installed. And as I mentioned before, the good quality check of your job is to make sure that those pads go in without any significant resistance. Then it means that you did a good cleaning job. So now we have our caliper pins, and we'll start with the top one. So the main point when you install them is there are like two grooves, and you want to make sure that this rubber bushing goes into this first groove when it's installed. If it doesn't go, the moisture will get inside and we'll have tons of troubles. So as I mentioned, this bolt doesn't want to go straight, so if it's under angle it will go in. So what we will do, if we put this in, we won't be able to get this sliding pin in. So I will try to get the top bolt loose and then push the caliper out a bit and see if I can wiggle this out. If not, we might need to remove the bottom one too and pull it out altogether, which is ridiculous setup. Probably the first vehicle that I'm seeing this issue. But so now when it's off, we can push this in and then hopefully put this back on, because we already have the pads installed. So we'll just gently slide it in, just like that. So this top pin is a pain in the butt to work with. So now we will get the caliper bracket started. And as I said, normally you would do the bracket first, but because of this top pin, we need to have it all off. Otherwise it's real struggle, and you don't want to get that hose loose because you will introduce air into the system. Then you need to delete the brakes and all that jazz. So now I will just get caliper bolts in. Okay, for the bottom pin, remember it has like a rubber bushing at the end. And we'll just go ahead and install that bottom pin. So we will use 14 mil on 9/16 wrench at the top, because nothing else will actually fit. Not sure where I put my wrench. Okay, so as I said, there's not room for the socket, and we need to torque this to 35 foot-pounds. Obviously the torque wrench will not get on the top one, so we'll just use wrench, and if you use a small wrench probably won't be able to over torque it, so we'll just go quite tight on it. So now that critical part that I was mentioning, try to zoom in. So you need to make sure that this bushing goes all the way up against the caliper and it stays there. So just like that. And same at the bottom. And if you forget to do this, there will be direct place where the moisture will get in. Next we will get the caliper bolts tight. Those are 17 mil. And again, I was not able to find good references for the torque specs, but judging by the size, in general by the torque on the other vehicles, we're looking somewhere around 100 foot-pounds for the caliper bracket bolt. Just get the bottom one tight too. Now we will torque them to 100 foot-pounds. Here we go. Next is important part of this job is to go into the cab, apply the brakes, as well as reinstall the cap under the hood on the brake reservoir. You need to pump your brakes because first time you get into the vehicle there will be no brakes. So please do that before you start driving. Next we will reinstall the wheel. Next we'll get them snug. And torque them to 83 foot-pounds of torque. And that should be it. Please like and subscribe. Please check links in the description to the video for all the parts and tools that you need. And as always, just do it yourself. That's 83 foot-pounds. It's easy to do when the vehicle is on the ground. Thanks for watching.